If you're new here, I'm Patty Blue Hayes, and I moved to Panama in 2019. What an adventure it's been. I was in search of a better quality of life on a smaller budget as I got older. And I've had quite the adventure since I've been here. I bought a fixer-up house and spent 8 months renovating the property. I've had surgery in Panama, and I've had a car accident and been without my car for 5 months. But I got to start a beautiful garden where I enjoy spending a lot of my time, and I absolutely love the nature and beauty that Panama has to offer. I am in Boquete in the Chiriquí province, and for a few videos I'm going to be doing property tours, restaurant information, interviews with business owners, and a lot of flowers. I hope you enjoy. I think it's even too windy for me to keep some of the sound on this video, because the first few days that I arrived in Boquete, it was high winds and rain, and also that famous Valle. But I did manage to get to the Tuesday market, affectionately known as the Gringo Market. It's a place on every Tuesday where people gather to sell their goods and services, and it also seems to be a place for social connection. I have to be honest, when I first strolled through, I was a little overwhelmed at just how many gringos were there, and I also went across the street to the more traditional Panamanian market and felt kind of sad that it was empty, but I have rethought about that. This only happens once a week, and the market across the street that has the typical Panamanian goods is open every day. So it would make sense that this is going to be a little more crowded than the market across the street. This market had everything from flowers to produce to honey, which I did buy a bottle of honey and brought that home. It was delicious. People are also set up with tables offering their services. This is the room where some organizers are set up to answer questions about their services. And there are baked goods and fruits and vegetables and jewelry and handcrafts. It really is a huge, bustling market, and it would be a fun place to go have a coffee, walk around, meet other expats. If you're new in Boquete, it definitely would be a good place to go and meet other expats. So I really did enjoy it. It was nice to get out of the wind and the bajareke and be inside the structure. It's at the Tap Out building, which is just over the river, the Caldera River, and you can look online for the hours, but generally it starts from, I guess, 9 in the morning till early afternoon. When I look at the Facebook groups for people that are moving to Panama, I do notice a lot of questions about organic fruits and vegetables. And when I first moved here, I thought that the stands on the side of the road, it was all just small farmers and everything was organic, and that is actually incorrect. The breadbasket of Panama is in Cerro Punta, and they do use pesticides and herbicides. So your best bet to get organic produce is to meet the farmer, and places like this at the Tuesday market, you can do just that. You can talk with the grower and ask if they use any pesticides or herbicides. And it is becoming more popular in Panama with smaller farmers, small producers. And also you can get to know other expats, and they might have a Facebook group just for that community, and you can start searching those groups for organic produce or other goods that you might want to get. I know goat cheese is something very popular that is made in El Valle, also in Boquete. Some really good producers of cheese. Here in El Valle, we have a bread club, so I'm sure there's, some bread makers in Boquete as well. Definitely check it out if you're going to be in Boquete on a Tuesday. If you're interested in moving to Boquete, or checking it out to see if it's a place you want to move, I have a series of videos that I've done on Boquete, and I think there's some really good information, especially from the people who have businesses there who I interviewed and the real estate professionals who I interviewed. Basically, the consensus is that there was a big growth explosion in Boquete after the quarantine or after the pandemic, because a lot of Panamanians from the city moved permanently to Boquete, and in addition to the Panamanians that moved, more foreigners moved to Boquete. Young families, notably. So not just, like retirement age people. And that brought a whole new opportunity for businesses to serve families. And apparently that's when a lot more restaurants have opened up. And I guess one of the downsides would be there's more traffic and there's more development that's happening. And I do have a very insightful video with a couple who own a small bed and breakfast, and they talk about the differences that they've seen since they moved and the growth that's happened in Boquete. I did see a statistic that there's been a 40% increase in residency applications in Panama. I don't know from when, from what year, but even if it's 5 years ago, a 40% increase is pretty significant. And I've definitely noticed that even in El Valle, which typically is just a very small, kind of sleepy town, but we've had a pretty big influx of people arriving, expats mostly, arriving in El Valle. The one thing about El Valle is it's very challenging to find housing. Rentals are hard to find, especially now because there was this huge issue that happened at the El Valle Suites, where there were, I think it was 16 one-bedroom apartment units, and it was the place that I always recommended to people when they first moved to El Valle. But everybody got evicted, and 10 people got evicted, and so the community, had to absorb 10 people looking for alternative places to live. One person went into the city, one person decided to go back to the States, and miraculously everybody else was able to find a spot to settle down. I'm going to do a more extensive video on that topic because it was a little complicated, but the tenants only got like 2 weeks notice of their eviction, and that's actually illegal, but there were some complications in how information was communicated to the tenants. So keep an eye out for that video. I recommend that you subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll get to see whenever I post videos. And here's the traditional Panamanian market that was kind of empty on Tuesday, but clearly there's a lot of stalls here, and I'm sure it's a lot more active on the days when the Tuesday market isn't happening and when the weather's a little better. It was not the greatest weather for the, I guess, like 2.5 or 3 days that I was there, and then like on the last day it got to be sunny and the skies were clear, and it was really beautiful. So here's where you can find some more like of the traditional Panamanian handcrafts and jewelry, pottery. Each area in Panama seems to have its own special craft that they produce. It could be baskets, it could be leather goods, it could be the pottery, and then at these larger markets you'll find a wide selection of many of those things. I think if you visit Panama, one of the things that you notice is how vibrant the country is. There's just so much color. And I know, I noticed that when I first started living here. First of all, the colors of just the flowers and the trees and just the vibrancy, when it's rainy season, the greens just seem so much more green. And then we have all these stunning tropical birds. And I think the Panamanian markets really reflect that vibrancy. I went to the flower exhibit. I guess this is where they have like the flower festival that happens annually. And just got to walk around. It was really a sweet little spot. I think it was quiet because of the day of the week that I went, but on the weekends I'm sure some of the vendors are open and you can have, strawberry shortcake and ice cream, and it looks like it's a very fun, family-friendly place to go. I did a video on the differences that I noticed between Boquete and Valle, but certainly one of the big differences is that you have places like this in Boquete where it's this huge grounds that's, clean, beautiful, and has a lot of places to sit. Also, it does appear to be accessible for anyone who might be in a wheelchair or have a cane or a walker, which is kind of unusual to see that in many communities in Panama. Generally, there's no sidewalks in places, and so this and the library park that I did a video on are great places to have access for people who might be in a wheelchair or walker or using a cane, and just the opportunity to be able to sit if your legs are getting tired. The river is just such a beautiful setting running through the town. It's just a very unique feature and a beautiful backdrop that Boquete has. So Panama is definitely a place where there's so much diversity. We have like the cosmopolitan Panama City, and then we have Caribbean towns like Portobello and areas over in Bocas del Toro, which I have not been to yet, so I can't speak from experience, but you get that like Caribbean laid-back vibe. Then you have these mountain regions where there's hiking and national parks, and people that have horses absolutely love these mountain regions. And then you have miles and miles and miles of beaches. I mean, from just outside of the city, I would say like Chame, like Punta Chame, all the way up to Puerto Armuelas. You've just got stunning beaches, some that you wouldn't see another soul for miles, some that are sparsely populated, and some that have thriving large populations. I'm going to repeat what my recommendation is for people who are considering moving to Panama, because it's definitely worth repeating. Rent first. Don't jump into buying something, and rent in a few different areas. So I made the mistake of jumping into a purchase. I just figured I have to live somewhere. I might as well buy a condo at the beach. I was going to live in Gorgona at the Royal Palm. My money didn't come through from the States, and it was actually a blessing because I could not take the heat. So that's when I then spent time traveling around the country, doing house and pet sitting, and then decided cooler climate regions are for me, and ended up in El Valle. Of course, I had to check out the flower shop where they were selling plants and flowers on the grounds of the Flower Expo, I guess it is. And it's funny, I recognized so many plants, ones that I've gotten and planted and then they promptly die. So then I don't repurchase those because I'm not going to waste all that money on plants that don't want to thrive. They can either thrive or die, but I'm not going to be fussy over my plants. That's one thing I'm learning about bromeliads that I love. They're not fussy at all, and they look healthy all the time. So I'm really enjoying having bromeliads. Anyway, I did get some amaryllis and some other plants, and so far everything I have at home seems to be doing well. If you like the idea of expat life, but you're struggling to figure out a way to make it work, or can it work, sign up for my Expat Clarity session. It's a 90-minute session where we go over all of your specific questions that are important to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.